we are very thankful to our panel for giving out their precious time to tell the students about their valuable experience. So let me give a brief intro about a day at work initiative. So it is an initiative by the career development wing of the academics and career council, which aims to tell the students and educate the students about the various fields, like what working in various fields looks like, because we as students are not aware a lot about that. So uh, therefore we have invited our very special alumni today in the field of software and information technology, and they will tell us something what working in this field looks like. So I would request the panel to tell something briefly about themselves, and thanks a lot for joining us and giving out your time.
Okay, I can start. I hope you can hear me. Like, can somebody wave if they? Okay, perfect. So I'm Afroz. I graduated out from the bachelor's and master's dual degree program in computer science, along with Himanshu and Mudit and Karthik, who and Ananya, who all would be joining soon, hopefully. So I graduated in 2010. Started working at Google. Left Google, joined investment banking, went back to Google again, and so on and so forth. You know, so yeah, it's been like a wonderful 10, 11 years now. Himanshu?
Hey everyone. So yeah, I was Afroz's batchmate. So I also completed my dual degree in 2010. So yeah, since then I have been working in the computer architecture field, and it has been 11 years. I joined Intel straight out of college, worked there for 6 years. Then I was working at Qualcomm for around 5 years, and I have recently joined NVIDIA.
Hi everyone, this is Mudit here. So I graduated in 2009 in bachelor's degree. So I was a batchmate of both the previous speakers, Himanshu and Afroz. After graduation in 2009, I was in Bangalore for 2 years working in Microsoft research. I moved to US in 2011, and I worked at Microsoft for almost 7-8 years in a couple of different teams. And for the last 3 years, I've been at Google. And I think Nandini, you can point out who the next speaker is, so it's easy to do the
Karthik,
coordination.
can you please tell us something about yourself? Karthik, you're on
You're
mute,
mute,
I
Kappa.
guess.
Oh, I just gave a great introduction and then I forgot everything. Okay. I graduated in 2010 along with Afroz Himanshu. Mudit was there like till 2009 in Kanpur. Out of campus, I worked in Oracle for a grand total of 5 months. I then worked in Google India for 2 years, 2.5 years. Then I was in Google US for 2 years more. Then was in Uber for a couple of years. Then came back to Google. I've been in Google for the last 4 years. Yeah, not. I mean, being pretty normal to be honest. Not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we have Ananya here now. So can you please, hi, welcome to the session. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us something about yourself?
Hi all. Well, so I'm also from 2005 to 2009 batch. I'm from EE, and I started with kind of hardware engineering side and slowly moved into performance modeling. And right now it's kind of a mix of both hardware and software. So that's a little bit of a different experience in the mix.
All right, so thanks a lot for your introduction. So now moving forward, I would like to ask you all, so can you please tell us briefly about your journey about your journey in which you decided how to choose your field and which type of company you wanted to work in, and how did you select that? What was your journey like, and what made you decide certain things? We can start with Afroz.
Okay, so the choice of what field you enter is rarely up to you, right? It's kind of like sort of all dependent on your rank, and after that, however, like these department transfers work and stuff. In my batch, I just know like two people who were fortunate enough, like get good CPIs and then like do a uh, department transfer, right? Branch transfer. One of them like moved to math from aerospace. So he was really interested in math, right? And somebody moved from like electrical to computer science, which was kind of like more straightforward. Um, I think the major decision in front of you is basically what you plan to do afterwards, because like we all know people who like who were chuggies, right? Like with 6 CPA, but like they've like done awesome stuff with their life, but they were always very clear that they wanted to like do an MBA and then whatever after that. So as much as possible, and I would like to thank the organizers for organizing something like this. You can get a feel for how different industries are like, what you would like to do. Some of it is definitely your interests, right? Like if some of you like some fields that have jobs in them, for example, like computer science and stuff, then or civil, or I don't know like where the market is hot, or biosciences these days, right? That's all the better, right? Like so you could do what you like to do and still like have a really good career ahead of you. But the other thing is like all of these like financial services and stuff like that, who we don't have a background for but are generally like hot in the market anyways. So one thing to be mindful about is to keep your eyes and ears open, right? Like just don't get into a silo of like uh, like I'm just going to do this one thing and one thing only. That is valuable in and of itself if you like plan to do like a postdoc or a PhD later on in that field, so all the better. But otherwise like for the rest of us, for the majority of us, I think like just having eyes and ears open, see how placements are happening and whatnot, and like plan it that way. Yeah. Mm, yeah. I'm done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Ananya, would you like to tell us?
Hey, yeah, so kind of similar to what Afroz said, but in my case, how I ended up in my field that I'm currently in, I kind of switched a bunch of times in between. In India, I started with a very hardware-focused job, and then I realized, for example, that I like a particular field in that, which was CPU design at that time. So I kind of moved into that direction slowly. And then after spending a few years in CPU design, I started to like kind of more of a system thing. So now I have moved to one level up in the abstraction hierarchy. Pretty much it. It's not, yeah, I wouldn't say it was very complicated. But just whatever you're doing, if you see, if you like that, just keep doing it, I guess. If not, then try to move around. That's what I've done so far.
Yeah, Himanshu. You're on mute, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that's a good piece of advice which Ananya gave, right? So it's not easy to figure out what you actually want to do, right? Or find, yeah, this is the thing which I want to do for the whole of my career, right? So when I started my college life, first 2 years, I wasn't sure if I want to work in my core engineering area or I would be taking up something outside my core engineering, right? So, but after my internship, I kind of made up my mind that, yeah, core is something which I want to make my career in. So now within core, there are multiple fields, right? Let's say if you are in computer science, there is the software programming or software engineer kind of roles. And even within software engineers, we have this machine learning engineers now. And then there is this computer architecture domain as well for CS graduates and as well as for EE graduates. So yeah, based on the coursework I was doing and the projects I did at college, I was more inclined towards having a job in this field. So in my 5th year, most of my PG courses were around this field. Like I took a lot of advanced architecture courses and advanced compiler courses to build a good profile in this particular domain. And if you look at the number of companies that work in this space are pretty limited, and not all of them used to come to our campus for placement at that point of time. So I think we had around 3 or 4 companies: Intel, Nvidia, I think this Applied Micro, AMCC, right? That was there. I think these were the 3 companies. Qualcomm came for just 1 year and then they didn't come to Kanpur. So yeah, these were the 3 companies which I was kind of, I mean, I prepared for these 3 companies. As a backup plan, I was also prepared. I mean, I was preparing myself for software roles as well, just in case I'm not able to get a job in this. So yeah, that's how it started. So I got an offer from Intel, and that's how my journey in this architecture field started. And yeah, once you get into any architecture team, as Ananya was saying, right, there are a lot of various things which are there. Like there are so many different IPs like CPU design or GPU architecture or memory subsystem, right? So yeah, you can keep switching based on what your interest area is. When you are early in your career, it's easy to take risk because you are fresh and your experience is not much, right? So you are like, you can pick new skills easily. But when you spend, let's say, 6 or 7 years in one particular domain, then it's not that easy to move to a new domain at the same experience level. So yeah, just keep trying stuff until you figure out what you want to do.
Great, Karthik.
Yeah, so for me, like I think my main thing was I understood computers in the very, very abstract. Like I had a computer at home, I like playing games. So it's like maybe this will be good to get, right? And the second thing was I was lucky enough to get a good rank. I never expected it. I was lucky enough to get a good job. Never expected it. I never expected the world order to completely change in the last 5 to 6 years as well, right? Like I always assumed that I'm making a suboptimal decision financially by not doing finance and doing tech instead, but it's like who cares? Like at least you get to work in tech, right? And I weighed it up and I was like, okay, like sure, like it's fine. Like who cares? I can't work 14-hour days in finance looking at Excel spreadsheets, right? So I think at that point, like once I was lucky enough to get CS, the path was basically set. Like I just wanted to work in a big tech company or like some techie stuff basically. And yeah, I mean, like finance never, like once you're in CS, I think like the work-life balance, whatever with finance just never made sense. And the work was honestly more interesting in tech. And once you remove compensation from the piece, and now it's not even comparable. Like now I think like tech is so far ahead of everything else that, but yeah, it's a very recent development that's happened. That was pretty much it for me.
Mudit.
Yeah, so I would actually answer 2 questions. One is very briefly, how did I select my career field? And then second is advice for how you should, like looking back, ideally how I would advise junior to select their career field. So in my case, I selected computer science due to very similar reasons as Karthik, which is I got a computer like in early 2000s. I used to like to try like simple coding problems or playing games or basically exploring it. And then I felt like I should go and try that in my like as in my undergrad as well. So I selected. Was lucky enough to get a good rank and select computer science. When I reached ITK, I started actually when the courses started, I started liking them, and towards the end of 4 years, so in 7th and 8th sem, I actually started taking MTech courses. So we get in 7th and 8th sem, you get optional courses. So I tried to take as many master's courses as I could. And at that time, I was introduced to machine learning, which was a much smaller field at that time. And so that's the point where I made the conscious decision that I want to be in machine learning field, because even though it wasn't hot at that time, I felt it will uh, it will definitely become big in the next few years. And that has happened, turned out to be true in the last decade. And today, I think machine learning, deep learning is among the hottest fields. So that was my journey. So as you can see, it relates to what the earlier speaker said, is that you try out things, you see what you like, you take a few bets, but then you also be flexible if you want to switch to uh, like if it is not working out, the field is not working out, either you don't like it or there are not enough opportunities, then you should be open to switching. Now, to specifically, if I was to advise someone going into computer science in software engineering, I would recommend you to first work for a few years, 2 to 4 years, I think 4 years in big companies. The benefit is that you get to see a lot of processes and different roles, which you don't get exposed to as part of your undergrad or your dual degree program, or like even actually MTech program. So things like how product planning is done, what is system design, how development cycle is done. So like what Scrum is about, UX design, metrics-driven development, and also see different roles, like not just engineering, but also engineering management, product management, program management, and so on. So none of these things are very difficult to know, but it's always good to like be exposed to them firsthand, that what all these processes and rules are about and why do they exist. After that, I would recommend you take a decision after, let's say, 4 years, whether you want to continue in big companies or go to smaller companies if you're, let's say, getting bored there. So then you can explore startups, maybe like Series C or Series D startups, which have good funding. So there you'll be exposed to other roles as well, other than just the product development side, which is like sales roles, marketing, customer support, and so on. So that would be my high level advice. And in each of these companies, either you're going for a big company or a startup, you should aim for the best possible company you could go for. Like, for example, for big companies, I would recommend go for Google or Facebook. Even if you, let's say, don't clear their interviews, try again 1 year later. If you fail again, try again another 1 year later. Similarly, with startups, try to go with the most promising and best fit which you think, and also they should have a good funding. So try to go for the best possible options. So yeah, that's my advice.
Okay, moving on to the next question. So basically, as we want to know from your experience, how does working in your field feel like? I mean, what do you find really great in your job, the nice perks and all? So you would start with Afroz.
So the question was about perks.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, basically, how is the overall experience of working in the field? What it is like?
Got it, got it. Yeah, I think like a little bit going from what Mudit said as well, right? Um, I didn't start off with machine learning. Like me and Mudit took the same machine learning course, and his learning was very different from mine, you know. But the fact of the matter is, you only remember like just a small fraction of what you learn in college. So the important thing is basically to learn how to learn, right? So I mean that's exactly what courses teach you, right? Like when you take these optional courses, whatnot, like they teach you not the subject matter, but like how you would go about learning something. That comes to be very handy when you actually start a job, right? Because the first week in on the job, you would feel like, hey, what am I doing? You know, like what is all of this about? You'll be like confused, right? Like every time I started a new job, I was very confused, like what is happening. So I mean, it's a good thing to like what you do, and basically to, for example, to choose, like another role or another team, basically. So one of the things that I really like about Google, and I think it is also going off of Mudit's advice to choose big companies and the best companies, is you will always find challenging or interesting work, you know. So it's very easy in big companies to get stuck in teams that are doing something that you find boring, right? So it's always important to keep a look around and then, like, you know, change to a team that you think is doing like really cool stuff, important stuff that you care about. And those options are definitely, you know, much more available in big companies, if you want to go that route. I mean, if you are going for go for a startup, then definitely you will only join if you think the startup is interesting. And by definition, there are probably much more startups doing interesting things than big companies. Like, you know, because when you interview at a big company, you don't really know which team you will get and whatnot. So it's difficult to know. So you are just trying to maximize your chances of doing something interesting. Yeah, personally for me, what I like in my job is you know, like trying to come up with new ways of doing things, more interesting way of doing things, more efficient way of doing things, you know, interesting product ideas and so on and so forth. Yeah, so I mean, overall, I find it interesting, and if you don't find something interesting, then look out for something else. Like, keep your eyes and ears open, right? Like, talk to friends, still network, like talk to everybody what they are doing, you know. Like, I mean, even in my peer group, I usually talk to all of the people that you see on the screen at least once a week or a month, to, you know, just to know what they're doing, how they're doing, and whatnot. Yeah.
Ananya?
Hey, work-wise, I would say it's kind of a combination of some things that are very procedural, that have to be at a certain cadence, for example, yearly or every 6 months or with every new product, you have to do certain things. And then there's a part which is very open-ended, and things, for example, things like if you have, I don't know, 1 million hours of user data on Mac platforms, what do you do with it? Right? How do you infer information out of that random kind of collection of data? So this sort of stuff is very open-ended, very interesting also. And for me, it's like the combination of both that drives me. And the end product also kind of the fact that I see whatever I've done being out in the field in the hands of people is also something that I really like about what I'm doing overall. Mhm.
Yeah. Himanshu?
Yeah, so perks is just one aspect of it. Other than that, I think working on the latest technology and yeah, getting to see the work which you are doing being used by so many people in the world is something which I would count as a benefit working in a big tech company. So yeah, since I work in the GPU field, I get to work on games which are yet to be released, right? Or work on the products which are yet to be released. And being in the architecture field gives me enough opportunities to do the exploratory work. Like we continuously work on improving our IPs, right? Be it CPU or GPU. So it's a combination of both. Basically, the kind of problems you are trying to solve in your role, uh, and the perks and package, right? So it's a combination of everything. So yeah, that's what I like about my job at this point of time.
Yeah. Karthik?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, like work is work, right? Mostly. I mean, honestly, at this point, for me, like work's about staying mentally engaged. Like I found that if I just disengaged from work, like I became slower mentally. So I think like the job's basically to keep me mentally engaged. And the more I view it that way, the better it actually gets because I can shut things down anytime. Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, and the perks
Mudit?
are good. And
Yeah.
it's a great privilege to work at Google. Yeah.
Yeah. Mudit?
Yeah, so again, like I also work at Google. So the perks at these top companies are definitely great. And especially initially, let's say when someone tells you you have free food and option of 10 different cafes with different cuisines and basically like all the you can travel to conferences once a year anywhere you like. And a lot of freedom in how you organize your day, and even how you organize your week. So those things are really great. But I think after some time, let's say after 6 months or 1 year, they become kind of obvious. So they're not going to motivate you every day to keep working. So I think the things that motivate me every day would be two things. One is uh, the field that I'm in, which is machine learning and software engineering. That is growing at a tremendous pace. So every day there are papers being published, there are products coming out, there are new articles, new events. So there's a lot of things to learn about and to stay on top of. So intellectually, that is very stimulating. So I think that is one reason. That is one factor that I really like. And the second one is from that theory, or from that apps, from that basically concept, when you actually implement something and then it gets used by real people, that also delivers a sense of satisfaction. So especially for these big companies, let's say like Google, um, like we have been using so many of their products throughout. Same, I think, for other folks as well, like Ananya, he works at Apple, and Himanshu at Intel. So Intel and Qualcomm. So these things, deliver some, like, basically a sense of satisfaction that what you're working on is being delivered and is being used by people. There is a slight flip side there, which is usually for these famous and popular products, the teams are quite big. So let's say for a product like Google Search, the team size would be about like 7-8 thousand people. So you will most likely be working on one very small and specific part of that. So that is the flip side. And if you want to have a bigger ownership, then startup would be a good option. But then there, the flip side can be maybe no one is using it if it's not a very popular product or a new product.
Yeah. So my next question to the panel is that when entering the job world, some of the common problems faced by working professionals is managing hectic schedules, maintaining a proper work-life balance, and also handling their finances. So what advice would you like to give to them, starting with Afroz?
So at least in big companies, right? And certainly I found it to be true of Google, and I'm pretty sure it's true of a few other big companies as well, is you can decide how much you kind of like want to like put in the effort, right? Like, you could do some minimal amount of effort and still be doing well at the job. Now definitely, right, if you want to like do good work, awesome work, you want to get promoted and stuff, so you would ramp that level up, like once you achieve some goals, like maybe you did get promoted, or maybe you changed teams and you just needed to initially work harder on a new team, and then you ramp down, right? So it's actually it actually fluctuates a lot. And certainly, like, I work in that mode. I cannot be like switched on all the time, like, and work all the time, for all the time, right? Like, there are certainly, like, for example, if there's a deadline, there's something really important that you want to finish, then definitely you will ramp up and down. As however you begin to grow more senior in your career, right? I mean, like, you can get more busy, but busy in a different way of telling other people what to do instead of like doing stuff yourself. This has different pros and cons, but I never had an issue of balancing like work and life, work life balance early in career, right? So and definitely, right? I mean, there is like enough slack in big companies so that, like, you are not going to be the blocker for, like a very important thing, right? So all of that resilience is and should be built in to your work. Definitely in startups, it's going to be completely different, right? I mean, like, you will probably be fighting fires all day, and, like, on a good day, you might get some time off, but it's important to, like, know what you're getting into, right? And to realize what mode of work you're getting into. I think the question of finances is extremely important, right? And there are a lot of resources online and everywhere, like, even if they are US centric and you still plan to work in India, right? Handling and managing finances is extremely important. I don't think it should be too much of a problem for us Indians, because we tend to be very fiscally conservative anyways, right? So unless you're eating out every day, I mean, like, even if you're eating out every day, if you get a good enough job, I don't think that's going to be a problem for your finances, but for your health maybe. So it's on that front, but definitely investing is something that probably everybody should look at right now, because all of us are going to be very good at saving money. What to do with the saved money? Index funds are a good option. So
I'm not able to hear Afroz.
Yeah,
I think
there's some
I
net
think
issue.
Like he's having a bad connection. Hey, Afroz, we can't hear you. Are you
I
muted?
think muted है क्या
Message
Afro?
कर
Uh, I think Afro muted Afro. Afro, maybe you're muted. Just recheck.
He's not. Hey, Afroz, can you try saying something?
asking him to try and join again.
All right.
Okay.
Himanshu, do you just want to go next, I guess, then? Himanshu or Mudit or
Yeah, I
Ananya?
think for financial advice, there are better people in the panel who can advise on that. But yeah, just keep reading about all this. That's very important. And yeah, talk to people. So in terms of, I mean, I'll give a very generic advice. So I think mentoring and networking help when you are early in your career. So anyways, if you join a company, they will assign a mentor or a buddy for you. So don't hesitate in asking uh, different kind of doubts which you're having, right? And always network within the company or outside your company as well, and talk to more and more people if you want advice on something, so that you can make an informed decision. So that's very important. One thing which I would say is it's very important to keep enhancing your skill set, because all these companies do try out a lot of new things. And I mean, whatever technology you use, right? And the world is changing so fast, it becomes old or obsolete in like 4 or 5 years, right? So it's very important for you to make sure that you are always aware of what is happening in your particular domain. You are reading about it, following conferences, reading papers. So yeah, that's very important. So just keep doing that right from the start, and yeah, then it becomes very easy to do well in your job.
Yeah, Ananya.
Hi, yeah, sorry, got dropped out. Basically, I think I would rate it as a very personal matter also. I think some people are okay with just spending all the time at work, and some people are not. So you have to find your sweet spot there. And definitely, I think big companies, as Afroz said, offer enough places on the spectrum of really working all the time versus slacking off all the time. So you can kind of, once you start looking into, you can start to fine tune what kind of life you want and how much time do you want to keep for work or not for work. Finance also, I think I wouldn't be the one guiding right now. I think there are better people here in the panel, but yes, there should be some basic awareness, and especially just out of college, I think again, it's a personal matter, but yeah, I wouldn't rate it as something that's really, really high on the list of priority. If you do basic stuff that, or if you can plan for the future at a basic level, it's fine. I think there should be some enjoyment also.
Karthik?
Sorry, what's the question again? I lost thread. Context.
Yeah, I mean, some of the common problems which working professionals face during their initial stages is maintaining a healthy work-life balance and also managing their finances. So what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think I'll agree with Afroz when it comes to managing finances, right? Like I think like most Indians are very fiscally conservative. Uh, like if you look at Americans or most developed nations, they just like they're okay with having like a 5 to 10% savings rate, whereas most Indians would be like that's insane, right? So I mean, saving is important, investing is important. I think the other skill to learn is actually how to spend as well. Uh, and spending on things that are not socially approved is really hard. But if you enjoy it, you should do it. Uh, right? I think, and there's realistically there's a window till you're about like I keep saying it's 45, but it's realistically it's around 30, 35 when you will actually be able to really enjoy what you do in terms of physical activities or travel or whatever. Right. So those things are important. Savings is important. Investing is important. I think when it comes to investing, I think I mean just don't overcomplicate it. I think like the only thing you have to set up is some basic automation to withdraw money from your bank account every month and invest in an index fund and invest in the US and India both basically. Like, and that's with that you're pretty much like 90% of the way there, right? The tendency is to believe that like a lot of information will actually help you out, but I think too much information is a curse. So once you have enough information, you should be confident enough to take a call. When it comes to work-life balance, I mean, I think like as Ananya said, it's very personal. Like sometimes you're just so interested by a project that you want to work on it a lot of the time, right? So and there are other times when you're not really interested, but you have to get stuff done. So you need to pick your battles. You need to decide what you're interested in, and then like tackle the problem accordingly. Like if there's a document that you need to send out to your higher ups, and you just don't want to do it, you can't just say that you don't want to do it, right? It's like turning an assignment in. Like just get to 80% and submit. And odds are it's going to be good enough. Like those are the sort of trade-offs you have to make. You can't do everything at like 110%. Like you have to be like willing to let some things drop on the floor. The other thing you have to be okay with is just leaving things half done, which is another very hard problem, right? Like our tendency is to basically just say that, like everything we do will be perfect and we'll finish everything we start. But if you do that, you're going to burn out because you're going to end up working 12-hour days on a consistent basis. You need to be okay with dropping stuff at 4 or 5 hours and saying that I'll handle the rest tomorrow. I think that's the only way you can sort of maintain some work-life balance. But if you enjoy working, especially in the early part of your career, you should go for it. Like don't let people tell you that, hey, don't work hard, maintain some work life balance and all of it. As long as you're meeting your family, doing all of that, you should work as hard or as little as you want.
Mudit?
Yeah, so I would say something similar to Karthik, which is, so first of all, this term work-life balance, you should, so this term is basically coming from US. It's more meant for people who have families. There's a different ideology in other places, like say like China, it's called 996. So that means 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. So, and that I think is more meant for younger people. So to basically decide between what you want to do, how much of work, how much of life, you should try to experiment a few things, and that can also change with the stage of life you're in. So if you're let's say you're just out of college, you just graduated, and for next at least 5 years or maybe 10 years, you don't have family responsibilities, you don't have kids, you're very healthy, you don't you can experiment if you really need work-life balance, or you can, if you're interested in work, you can just focus on work full throttle. And then after, let's say, 5 years or 10 years, when you do have family, then you can decide, do I still want to continue that, or do I want more work-life balance? And even within, let's say you decide for more work-life balance, you can decide whether I want to allocate some time every day for relaxation and enjoyment, or I want to have it in chunks. So chunks could mean only on weekends I would relax and do no work at all, but rest of the week I'll work really hard. Or you could decide most of the year I would work really hard, but for 2 weeks or 1 month in a year, I would do no work at all and just like travel or explore some interest, or like basically do no work at all, do something else. So different people do different things. Like even in US, there are people like Bill Gates, or like basically any startup founder who would actually not have any work-life balance, but they would allocate some time for not doing any work, but that's in small chunks, not every day. So basically, to summarize, my point is you should experiment with a few ways and then decide by yourself what work-life balance or work means for you.
Yeah. So my next question for the panel is that how should we decide whether we should go for a master's or not, or maybe for a PhD? So would anyone in the panel like to answer that?
I can take that one. Actually, and before that, just I didn't meant talk about finances. So I would simplify, like really, really simplify it. If you follow this advice, you're basically doing 90% of the things. So the simple advice is have about 6 months of your expenses in your bank account. Anything above that, so just calculate like how much do you spend every month and multiply that by 6. Keep that money in your bank account. That's the liquid money. Anything above that, invest in low cost ETF funds. So it could be like entire stock market, or like US, India stock market, something like that. Pay all your high interest loans before any investing. So anything which has, let's say, 5% or more interest rate, pay that off. And once you have enough money invested in, let's say, about 8, 9 years, 10 years, at that time, when you have money to try out new things, at that time you can try out startup investing. So it's called angel investing. Any other things like picking particular stocks, or going for ULIP plans or LIC funds, you should try to avoid that, because that's basically complex. So that this advice will take you 90% of the way. The last 10% is not that critical for most people, but if someone is interested, you can read a lot of articles and books available, and then go for it. But for most of the people, for 90% of the way, just follow simple 6 months of expenses, pay high interest loans, invest anything beyond that, and 10 years later, start exploring startup investing. And yeah, then the actual question, next question was,
Oh yeah,
between
one
master.
comment on that is like, just
Yeah.
anytime a bank manager or someone tries to sell you stuff, just run away and tell them no, because I think like they're doing it because they have a high commission with ULIP and LIC and all these policies. Even in the US, like anytime a bank employee tries to sell you something, just say no and run. Right? Like that, and with that will be fine. Like, yeah, sorry, keep going.
Basically try to sell you the rosiest picture, the best case scenario, but that's because most of the times they're getting very high commission. So just avoid that and keep things simple. Yeah, so the question about bachelor's versus master's versus PhD. So I would say the main purpose of doing master's is there are two reasons. One is, and especially I'm talking about from US universities, two reasons. One is if you want to come to US, so that it makes the immigration process easier. You get an F1 visa and then OPT and then H1B. That's one reason. And the second reason is if you're actually interested in going deeper in a particular field in your area, so a particular specialty that you can pursue in masters. If you want to go beyond that, which is PhD, that I would recommend only if you're interested in doing research or like going in a research lab or going into academia, so becoming a professor. Other than that, BTech is actually quite fine, or dual degree is quite good enough. If you, so what I did after my BTech was I didn't go for masters or for PhD. I took a few courses from Stanford. So these days, almost every university, like top universities, they have courses that you can take without actually enrolling in them. So you can just pick up a few courses which you think are relevant for you or interesting to you and just do them. So that will avoid a lot of money and time that you're going to spend. I think we used to get advice about MBA as well, but maybe like someone else can add about it, but I don't have much experience there, so I won't talk about that.
Anyone from the panel would like to add to this?
Yeah, for the MBA stuff, right? It's not a bad option, right? And even like, I mean, it doesn't preclude you from working in, say, for example, the tech industry if you want to, right? Like, I know a lot of product managers who are MBAs, but were engineers from IITs before, right? So it's a perfectly, like, very cool way of doing things, in the sense that, like, for us with a very technical mindset, I wouldn't understand why somebody would want to choose that option from the get-go. But it's very easy to understand that, even in a company like Google, or even in startups, right, there is a lot of scope for product managers, for strategy, and for a lot of things. And doing MBA is a fair way to go. Like, earlier in the meeting, I was saying about, like, one of our friends who basically just had a 6 CPI, and he knew he didn't want to be in tech at all, and he just barely made it through, like, after failing a bunch of courses. But he's probably doing better than all of us, right? Because he's extremely clear that he wanted to do an MBA, and after that he wanted to do this or that. So I think having some clarity there helps. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
So yeah, PhD is, I mean, it's very specific, right? You spend a lot of time exploring in one particular domain. So unless and until you are sure that that's what you want to do uh, for a good considerable number of years, only then you should do it. Also evaluate what options are there post PhD. Like if you want to work in research kind of domain throughout your career, or you want to be in academia, then PhD makes sense. Otherwise, yeah, you can. Uh, I mean, you'll be doing otherwise similar kind of work which an undergrad or MS is also doing, right? So if you work in a normal team which is not in a corp R&D or which is not in research domain, then you are doing same work as other engineers. So then PhD doesn't make much sense. People do MS for a lot of reasons. One is moving to US, which is very common. The other one is, yeah, sometimes you want to do a few advanced courses in a particular field. But yeah, now given this online learning, right, it's easier to do all these courses online as well, no matter where you are in the world, right? Even if you are in India, you can do courses from Stanford, Berkeley, right? And all these big companies have tie-ups with these universities. A lot of times they sponsor all these courses. So yeah, you can actually do online masters from Stanford, and your company can sponsor the whole thing as well. So you don't have to go for MS. You can do it while you are working. Like Mudit did few courses, right? So you can choose that path as well.
And also, I think for PhD, I'd like to add another thing. There's a lot of variability that you have to keep in mind while going in, both in terms of time and experience. And unlike other programs, there's no, for example, set end date, or there's no cadence of kind of this, by this time you will get to this. It could take years, or it could finish very fast, or your advisor can change, or his projects can change, his moods can change. It is a variable experience. Unless you're interested in research as a lifestyle for a few years, I wouldn't really recommend it.
Yeah, I think most people do MS to get into the US and use the immigration path. And a lot of people will actually apply for a PhD and then leave after the masters, because it just makes sense, right? You get a stipend and you don't have to worry about tuition. So you can start with a PhD and leave with a master's. I will say that PhDs and grad students have been known, no one documents it, but I think mental health is definitely a concern. PhDs are hard. PhDs are really hard because it's 5 years on a single problem at times. If you have to change advisors, losing years really hurts. The other thing to note is that, especially if you're in tech, like you should understand this concept called opportunity cost, right? So for example, you could get a master's in 2 years and start working at Google, but instead of working at Google for 3 years or working at any big company or a startup for 3 years, if you decide to pursue a PhD, that unless so again, whatever I'm saying is from a rational perspective. If you really want to do it, you should, but understand that there's an opportunity cost to doing a PhD. Those 3 years, if you spend at a big tech company, you would have been much farther ahead. If you wanted to get financial independence or anything like that. The other thing to note is that how status oriented are you? And people don't like to acknowledge this, but most people are. Would you be okay with getting a PhD in 5 to 6 years time when all your batchmates and everyone is sort of now becoming a senior engineer at some company and making a lot more and doing all these interesting things? So if you're status oriented, and most people are, if you're not, good for you, but acknowledge this and keep that in mind, right?
Okay, so moving on to the next question, I would like to ask the panel that how should we decide and handle immigration to foreign countries like USA or Europe?
So mostly the companies will do it for you, based on my experience. If they want to hire you, they'll handle your immigration. Most big tech and startup companies have good lawyers now. So in case you don't get a US visa, they'll relocate you to Canada or London or even India or something like that. So they handle all the relocation. They'll get you in after a couple of years. I think with remote work, the situation changes drastically, right? So because it changes drastically, you can work from anywhere. You can work for any company from anywhere, and I think that changes things. So you're not limited by the immigration policies of a particular nation in some sense.
So yeah, I think more than immigration policy, I think we should answer it how you can. I mean, if someone wants to move to US, right? What's the best way? So I think finding job in US office right after college is not easy, right? Because I mean, most of the companies who are coming for campus placement, they come for their Indian offices, right? So if you are specific about moving to US and you don't want to go via this MS route, then it makes sense for you to figure out which companies actually have programs which makes relocation easier, right? Like Google is one company in which relocation is easier. But let's say if you are working at Intel, right, where relocation won't be easy. So if you are sure about moving to US, try to work in a company where they have a set policy or a program which makes an employee move to a different geolocation easy. So do background work and try to get a job in that particular company. And then you can actually move on L1 visa, right? You don't have to go on H1B if you are moving to the same company. So getting L1 is easier than getting H1B, and then later you can apply for H1B once you are in US.
Yep. I think if you get an L1 and you come to the US, that works too. And then you keep applying for an H1B and then you can get that transition. I think that's the path both Afroz and me actually ended up taking.
Yeah.
So I would add a few things there. So first thing is you need to first decide whether you want to be based in US or in India. And both of those have their own advantages and disadvantages. So at least 10 years ago, when we were making this choice, US, I think, was clearly 10x better than India in terms of the kind of projects you work on, the kind of compensation you get, the kind of options that are available. I think over the last decade, so basically today, that difference has reduced quite a bit. So I would say it's still there. So maybe like 4 or 5x, but not like 10x. And I think it's going to reduce over time. So the main reason people come to US is because of that, like opportunity. So like money, companies, the like the technical roles. So those are the main reasons. The downside of coming to US is, at least initially, you'll be staying away from your friends and family and a familiar environment. But then over time, you do get used to it. So that reduces to become as much of a problem. So that's first point, whether you need to make a decision whether to be in US or not. And again, decide for yourself and talk to a lot of people and decide for yourself. The second question about the immigration is, first part is visa, which I think Himanshu and Kepa Afroz talked about, which is either L1 visa or H1 visa. The second part is about green card, which is if you want to stay long term in US, then you need to have green card, because being on a visa for 7-8 years becomes very like it becomes a big headache. There are a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of rules keep changing with the governments, and like you need to get visa stamping and so on. So that becomes a big headache. So because of that, you need to have a green card. And to get a green card, you need to be aware of how do you get it. So I would recommend you to, if you're interested in that, like read in the initial few years what the queues are for Indians, and what is the estimated time when you'll actually get the green card. So like being aware of that, because there's a pretty long queue there. And yeah, basically that's how I would summarize it.
Anyone would like to add?
No, I think.
Okay, so now moving on. So now, can you tell or comment upon the challenging areas of those work or some of the downsides of this field?
I mean, I can speak to the downsides. I think sometimes it does get like a bit grindy, right? Like there's a lot of repeated days, a lot of frustrations around deadlines, a lot of having to answer up top. Like why aren't you able to make deadlines and timelines? I mean, yeah. So there's some downsides to it. I mean, I think it does definitely get to you after a bit. Like and I think at that point of time, you really need to isolate yourself from your work. But I mean, apart from that, I think in terms of jobs, it's actually pretty great, right? So, for example, if you look at finance, or if you look at any other industry, or if you look at what my parents have to do, like in software, you basically show up in t-shirt and shorts to work. The times are not very strict. You can like in finance, you have to show up at when the market's open and do all of this, right? So, I think the downsides are, like, when it comes to jobs, the downsides are actually very, very low. But you do struggle at times with like delivering features and getting stuff done, and like you have to report upwards. And I mean, the inevitable comparisons always set off, right? Like you inevitably you're going to find that like 30 to 20% of your batchmates are going to just like go so far ahead, or like when you look at people, you're like, wow, like this person is so far ahead and I'm behind. Or you never look below, right? You always look up. So those are the pretty much the downsides from my perspective. But as far as jobs go, it's actually pretty great.
So downsides actually depend on your role and team as well. So a lot of teams aren't very good in terms of work profile, or in terms of the people who are in their team, right? So I mean, you interact with so many people, right? I mean, there are all kinds of people in all these companies. So sometimes your manager is not good. Sometimes some of your colleagues or your mentor can be a shitty person, right? And it happens all the time, and it happens with so many people. So it's very important to make sure that if you feel that you are in this toxic team or with toxic manager, try to get away from it as soon as possible. And a lot of times there is office politics as well. And yeah, a lot of people will try to put you down, right? So there is a lot of competition after a certain level in all these big companies as well, right, to get to the next level. So yeah, it's not easy for everyone. I mean, company can't promote everyone at the same time, right? It's a pyramid structure. So as you go up, you'll see that not everyone will get promoted at same cadence. So yeah, I mean, uh, all these are part and parcel of your corporate life, but yeah, you have to deal with it. The other thing is, yeah, since it becomes competitive at times, you might be doing a lot of work. So it's very important to make sure that you have proper work-life balance, right? So I mean, it boils down to the old question. So you should be able to find what's the sweet spot for you. If you are not able to, then you will feel that, I mean, you'll start getting demotivated basically because of the constant work pressure. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think
deadlines do put a lot of pressure at times. So that's there.
One thing that I would like to point out, like all of what was discussed is more or less applicable to any field, right? Like not
Yeah.
just tech.
Yeah.
One very specific tech thing is that you might have to update your skills very frequently. For example, right, like when we were joining, like all the craze was mobile, right? Like, mobile was ramping up, smartphones were coming, and so for a period of time, like, apps was the craze, right? Hey, everybody has to know how to make an Android app, an iOS app, and so on and so forth. uh, After that, for a period of time, things became, hey, like cloud, right? Hey, like everybody has to know stuff about the cloud. There's AWS, there's Google, there's Azure and whatnot. And like, machine learning has always been there kind of, but it has like lately really started to explode, right? And this has happened before that, like machine learning has gone out of favor, right? I mean, this time certainly seems to be different, but who can say, right? So I think for tech, um, more than anything else, I think you have to be on the lookout on how to keep your skills current, right? Like when I think when we joined, um, um, Ska, who's unfortunately no more with us, taught us a programming code in Java, right? Um, I think I hardly wrote like 2,000 lines of Java ever again in my life after graduating. It was all C++ or Python or TensorFlow or whatever have you, right? Like whatever new thing. So in tech, the unique kind of downside, but also a fun side is like you will always have to keep upgrading your skills, which might not be such a big deal, for example, right? Like in other industries, right? Like there might be something very incremental to learn, but in tech, in the middle there was also this crypto craze, right? So if you really wanted to work in like dozens of startups who are doing crypto here, there, in China, wherever, like you would have to know, hey, like about this distributed ledger and so on and so forth. So that's also a good aspect because like something exciting keeps happening, and a very good upside is, um, coding is not limited to just tech. I think in the future a lot of other fields would need programmers, would need to tell computers how to do stuff instead of like only people in tech. So I think it's kind of like coding is going to become like the new reading and writing, so like in today's world, if you don't know how to read and write, that's a big problem. I think in tomorrow's world, if you don't know how to code, it might be a big problem. um, Not that much, but still a little bit. Yeah, so done.
Anyone would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think like pretty much the downsides we mentioned are related to any job, right? But yeah, there is skill acquisition that you have to like. You can't just rest on your coattails, basically. I think unless you become like a manager or an engineering director or something like that, in which case you still have to pick up different skills on how to run organizations. And contrary to what people think, I think there is a bit of art and science in it as well. Like it's not just about hey, like make random stuff up and like hope that your loads like things just don't work that way. But yeah.
All right. So now moving on to the final question from my side to the panel. So what message would you like to give to us students here who are attending your session? I mean, to the graduate, postgraduate students.
Yeah, who wants to go first?
I mean, Himanshu, why don't you do it? Why don't you give advice to your younger self?
Okay. I mean, what is this advice to the current students or to my younger self?
Yeah, advice to the current students or maybe to your younger self. I mean, you know, people of our age, what advice would you give them?
I mean, yeah, enjoy your college life. So grades and courses are important. So you should make sure that you are putting enough focus on that. That's the first priority you should have. But do try to enjoy your college life, make friends, spend good time with them, figure out what you want to do in next 5 years. That's very important. So try out different things when you are in college. Talk to your seniors who have come back from internship or who have just started their career. Talk to them, find out what different domains look like, and then yeah, explore things. Initially, I would say if you're not sure what you want to do in life, there is no harm in trying multiple things. You can be at one company for an year, then you can switch to another. So it's perfectly fine to do that in your initial few years. So yeah, I mean, at this point of time, enjoy your time, improve your grades if they aren't good, and yeah, keep trying new things.
So I think one very I'll only have one very specific advice because I think a lot of like what Himanshu said is all true. Just one very specific advice is whenever you're basically looking at entertainment, like whether you're basically work life, when we talk about work life balance, try to make the entertainment as active as possible. So try to avoid making it passive. I think it was there in our time as well, but these days there are so many different venues like like YouTube, TikTok, all kinds of things where you get a lot of passive entertainment. So I would one single piece of advice would be try to spend time on doing things yourself which you enjoy. Like it could be talking to people, it could be trying some hobby, and uh, even the passive entertainment should be there, but it should be in a limited amount. So don't just keep watching movies or TV shows all by yourself. When you want to relax, when you want to entertain, do try to find active ways of entertainment, like pick up sports, pick up some like music hobby, talking to people, reading books, doing things. So that would be my one single advice.
One more thing to add is advice I wish somebody had given me when I was younger or still in college, because I was a little bit introverted. Is to basically like network among your friends, but also very importantly among like one batch senior or one batch junior. I don't think, or a few batches senior, a few batches junior, because you will know out of necessity a lot of your batchmates, but I don't think it's a big stretch to like once a week or something, just ask a random junior or a senior to like just hang out and talk.
Yeah, so for me, I think one of the things which I learned very late is like especially in India, like people just give you advice all the time, right? And we are doing it to you right now. You have, and most people don't really. I mean, they'll give you confidence with 110% advice. Like you meet someone on the train in India and they'll tell you what you should be doing. You should be okay ignoring them. I mean, when people use this word pressure and stuff like that, there's so much pressure, there's social pressure and anxiety and stuff. It's like you're going and looking for it. And in reality, social pressure does not. I mean, if you frame it as like, hey, people are just asking you to do stuff. No one's actually pressuring you. Like real pressure is something that's very different. Real pressure is that they have a gun to your head or something like that. Like, and no one has a gun to your head ever, right? The other thing I wish I had known was that, like how important are extracurriculars or stuff like that. Like, it's like not really, right? Things like doing your own project work, things which show your own initiative rather than, so for example, right, like people make a big deal about being a student guide and all of it, right? And it was a big deal on our campus, and in hindsight, like I don't ever think about it at all now. Right, like people make a big deal about hospitality coordinators and stuff like that. Like I was a rocknet coordinator. It doesn't matter. Like I don't think about it at all. Like all these years later, like I think anywhere where you take initiative on your own, I think what Mudit said, right? Like for example, if you develop a project on your own, that will teach you a lot more and you will enjoy it a lot more than fitting into an organization on campus where you're just running around for 3 to 4 days. It's fun. Do it only if you want to, but understand that it's not really going to materially affect your chances. For example, from a purely utilitarian perspective, you're better served by learning how to code rather than like learning how to be an event organizer. It might help you like 5 years down the line, but do it only if you want to, because it's a lot of work. You have to be like, you should know what you're doing. The other thing which I wish someone had really told me was that like people 1 year senior to you, they're basically your age. You have to, at minimum, if you take advice from people, take advice from people who are like and you're in the 4th year or 5 to 10 years out, because they are the only ones who will be able to give you an accurate picture. And even then, if you disagree and if you really want to do something, you should go ahead and do it, right? And I wish I had traveled a bit more with my friends and wingmates. I think this time never comes back. Like I think the computers are all there, everything's there. But I think take advantage of the campus, and like, and if don't get into this all or nothing mindset as well. Like a lot of times people get into this, hey, we got a single C grade, so we'll just let all our academics fall. There is a happy medium. Like you can be an 8-pointer, 8.5 pointer, that's okay. But don't just like, and there's a huge disagreement on this, but don't be in an all or nothing mindset. Don't say that I'll either be a 10-pointer or a 4-pointer. That's not a healthy way to view life. There's always a happy medium which you can pick. Don't let things fall completely. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Actually.
Yeah, so now we would be answering questions from the audience. I guess many questions are already answered in the chat box. If anyone else wants to ask, they can raise their hands or put it in the chat box.
You can also, like if you want to direct question to one particular person, then you can ask, like mention that person's name or ask that person.
Yeah, so
And Nandini, you can coordinate it, like pick the questions and direct it to a person. So that would be easy for everyone.
yeah. Yes, Costa wants to ask a question. Let me unmute him.
Hi everyone. So my name is Kaustubh Sen and I am a 4th-year undergrad from IIT Kanpur. So like my question is from Himanshu. So hi Himanshu. Yeah. So like I am from electrical branch, and like this summer I worked in one of the core companies, TI. So from there I also received a full-time offer to join from next year. So like for long term, like as you mentioned in the chats also that yeah, MS will help for the long terms, but like after how many years should I start planning for the same? And because currently I have not that much explored electrical code, like I have done only courses and 1 or 2 projects, but I don't exactly know that much sub profiles like radars, signals, and in depth I don't have that much experience. So like first of all, I want to do a job for 1 or 2 years, but like exactly from your experience, after how many years should I start thinking for MS or for higher studies?
Yeah, so you don't
The
have to
same.
do MS to have a good career in this domain, right? You don't have to do MS. So what I would say is, so once you join the, or I mean, in your internship also you would have figured it out. So since you are from electrical, right, there are a lot of teams in these companies who hire electrical or electronics engineers, right? So design, a DV, physical design, right? So figure out what you want to do, because there are so many different domains available for an electronics engineer. So after joining TI, find out what other teams are doing. Let's say you are in design validation team, right? But after 6 or 8 months, you may figure out that design is something which you want to do uh, in the long run. So after that, you try to increase, I mean, or do online courses, I would say, rather than going for MS, right? So let's say you want to work in design team. So you would need to be proficient in computer architecture, system Verilog and few scripting. So you can do courses around that, or you can just read stuff online and try solving some problems on your own and just give interviews in those teams. You don't have to do MS to get the domain expertise. There are a lot of online avenues available using which you can become a domain expert even without doing MS. Like MS won't help you in accelerating your career. So yeah, BTech is also fine. I
So
hope
like
that
basically
answers
in
your question.
parallel, so basically in parallel with the
Hey,
job,
hey, yeah, you can ping me.
we
I
can do
think otherwise
courses.
we won't be able to take too many questions, right? We can have an offline discussion. So you can ping me.
Okay, okay, sure,
I'll reply
sure,
over there.
sure. Thanks, Himanshu.
Yeah, Suhas has a question.
Yeah, hi. My question is to Afroz. It's about a comment that where you said that HFT is a shrinking pie. So I was just wondering if you could elaborate a bit on that, because yeah. So that's
So basically, HFT is like a zero sum game, right? Like you win by being faster than others. Uh, Whoever has the closer connection to the exchange wins. So the exchange tries to give them the same connection and whatnot and so forth. So and it is like it is finite, right? Like the pie is in the sense that, for example, if you build like a good app or you build a good product that people use, right? You are making something better for somebody and they are willing to pay you for it, right?
right.
In HFT, basically the point is, or in day trading for that matter, right? Like your profit is somebody else's loss, right? So it is zero sum, right?
Okay.
Nobody is basically winning because like you making things faster in HFT or making a better algorithm is benefiting the world, right? It's still the same stock or option that is being traded or bought and sold. You are just doing it better than everybody else, right? It's not creating new value in the world, right? Like it's not like, for example, like Zoom or something, right? Before we had like all these conferences and stuff used to be in person, but now Zoom is there, Google Meet is there and whatnot. you we can have something that we couldn't have before, right? That is what creating value in the world means, right? Like you are doing something that others are finding useful and they're willing to pay you for it. So HFT basically is kind of like a shrinking pie in that sense, that your gain is somebody else's loss, and the more smarter people you have, because the pie is finite, on things are much harder, right? And so what happens is, because like this is market driven, if people don't see a lot of profits and stuff, they will stop hiring, right? And people will shut shop, or do, rather than stop. That is exactly what I meant. And I know a bunch of people who like they just did this for 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, and just like they're in tech now. big issue if you end up joining HFT and then, for whatever reason, decide you have had enough or you don't like it anymore. And not taxing your brain a lot, right? It will like make you think hard and work hard.
Yeah, Feroz, I think
So I
your
think it's a good.
connection is bad.
Okay. All right. I think I have a very choppy internet, but I think you got what I was trying to say.
I got it. So basically, you're not adding any value. So there's going to be a cap to the profits that anybody can make and things like that, right?
Basically, I mean, it can still be good if you join, right? And then decide, okay, fine, I'm done here, right? So that's also fine too, right? Like, so you could join, you could see it for yourself, do it. But there's no harm done because it's a challenging. Feed, right? Like you are using your mind, you're using your yeah, done. Thanks. Yeah, feel.
Yeah, anyone else? If you all don't have any questions, so we are waiting for 5 minutes. After that, we'll end the session. So if you want to ask, you can ask right now. You can raise your hand. Okay, so Has has another question.
Yeah, I just had a small follow-up to that. So I want to know how difficult it is to transition back into software once you try something like trading. So like, is it difficult? Is it
You mean transition from where to where? So you mean you leave software and 1 second, let me just plug into a power outlet.
So let's say you try quant trading for a couple years and let's say it's not meant for you, or you don't like it. So then if you come back to software, is it like you start from like, from the start again? Is that how it happens?
So I think most companies give you like a 6 month to a year pass anyway. So if you're in a tech company and you leave and you decide to come back in a year, like companies have processes to re-interview and just take you back. So I mean, I haven't seen that being an issue.
Okay, all right.
Himanshu, you're muted if you're saying something.
Yeah, it's easy if your years of experience is less than 4 to 5 years, right? So then when the company is trying to place you, it depends entirely on your performance during the interview, right? So based on that, they'll try to put you at certain level. But beyond that, in some companies, your domain knowledge also becomes important. So they may not be able to hire you at the highest level possible, right? So,
Right.
but below 4 to 5 years of experience, yeah, I mean, it's very easy to come back to software.
Okay. So interviews, even after a couple of years, are very similar to how interviews happen right now for fresh graduates. Is that correct? In some sense.
Depends on the level you are at, to be honest. I think like senior engineer and above interviews are very different from entry level right now.
Okay.
You'll have like 1 or 2 coding interviews, but more of it will be system design. Like if you really want to leave, yeah. So yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Nirmal has a question.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I was just wondering, so if you see alumni play an important role for the institute, like one of the main things is they help juniors. Like for example, let's say a prospective candidate wants to shift a company or something, they approach a alumni, from IIT Kanpur, and if the alumni finds they are really good, maybe they hire. And I think maybe it's easy in Indian offices, but let's say a prospective candidate applies, sends their resume to one of you. So, and you feel that they're really great. So would you be able to hire them? Like, how easy or difficult it is, like in spite of enough skill set or something?
I can take that question. So first of all, you don't need to be really great. I mean, as long as you have decent competence required for the job, you're eligible.
Yeah, sure.
Most of the times in US, the way alumni can help is by referring you. So at least that's the way it works in the top companies, that they can refer you internally, and that makes the process of setting up the interview, going through the entering the process easier. But then you have to clear the interview bar independent of whom you know, like who the alumni is referring you. So that's the process in most places. In some places, it does depend a lot on the team. So the manager will matter a lot. But even in that case, people try to avoid any conflict of interest. They would put you through the process. So in summary, the way alumni is making things easier for you is by referring you to the right place and getting the process started. But the rest of it, you have to do yourself. They can also give you some guidance on which companies to apply in based on your background and like any other questions you have. But mostly they won't be able to directly hire you because that would be considered favoritism.
Right. Yeah, sure.
HRs have these policies, right? So if I refer someone, I won't be interviewing him or her. It's very clear, right? So
Okay.
they can just help
So I
you in
think-
finding the right role and guide you through the interview process. Or the
I think at
recruitment.
entry level, this is how tech is very different from finance and other people, right? Like, for example, like in finance, like some senior might have enough influence to get you pulled into his team or whatever. Fortunately or unfortunately in tech, like none of us have the ability to sort of do that, right? Like the best we can do is refer you, and after that, like you have to go through the same kind of interviews and all of it, and you still have to like get all of them. And it's a reasonably fair process. It's problematic, but it's reasonably fair.
No, Karthik, can you repeat, like, what's the difference between finance and tech with respect to referring? Can you repeat?
Like in finance, if you know someone personally, like it matters a great deal, right? Like
Okay.
if you know someone, like I won't say let you in, but the interview bar is significantly lower. Like if you know someone, like those things. But if you, even in HFT or any techie or engineering related roles, like things don't work that way. So yeah. But once you get to like higher levels, I think then the connection, like I think that's a misconception. I think once you get to higher levels in Silicon Valley, like connections do matter a lot. Like if you know the right people, you can get like, for example, you can get like a CTO position in a startup and all of that relatively easily if compared to just like showing up as a. So your connections matter in the valley too, in the tech industry as well, just not as much in the start. But once you get in, you do have to make connections and make sure that like your network, like to call it but you do have to make sure that you have some connections and friends in other companies, right? Like that makes your path much easier. Yep.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So anyone else has a question? All right, so I guess that's the end of the session. I want to thank the panel for giving out their precious time to enlighten us with their knowledge, and it was really helpful. And also, I would like to thank the people for attending the session. So thank you, one and all.
Cool.